Hey everyone, welcome back to Programming Fields. I'm Umesh, and in this video, we will dive into data tables in Laravel 11. Firstly, we will see the client-side implementation, its limitation, and further we will implement the server-side using Yajra. Yajra is one of the most powerful and flexible libraries for data handling in Laravel. Today's session is packed with everything you need to know, from setting up data tables to implementing client-side and server-side functionality. Also, we will see how to customize columns, adding actions, and even handling advanced search features. So let's get started. But before jumping to the practical implementation, firstly let's discuss what a data table is. So in order to know about data tables, we will quickly jump to the official documentation of data tables. So data tables are a powerful tool for managing and displaying data in the tabular format, especially for handling large data sets. They come with essential features like pagination, sorting, and search functionality. These features make it easy to navigate and work with data effectively. In this tutorial, we will implement data tables in two ways: the client side and server side. Let's break down the differences before implementing these two. Data tables can be either client side or server side. In client side data tables, all data is loaded initially and managed on the client. This makes it suitable for a smaller data set. Now, in the other hand, the server side data tables load data in smaller chunks directly from the server on each request, and which is more efficient for large data sets. So let's start with the client side data table. Firstly, we will prepare some sample data using Laravel factories and migration so that it will be easier to render those data through data tables. So I have a fresh Laravel 11 installation here, and if I will come to the code editor, now if I will come to the database, here we have the migrations. Inside create users table migration, we have these default columns added. Now I will customize the migration and I will add one more column as phone number. Okay, and I will add unique constant. This is fine. Now respective to this migration, we will have to update the fillable property in the user model. So let's come to the user.php. Here inside this fillable property, we'll have to add that phone number field. Okay, this is done. Now let's come to the terminal and we'll type php artisan migrate refresh. Yes, this rolled back the existing migration and it executed the fresh one. Now we have to seed the database, especially users table, using the factory, so that we will have the dummy records for rendering using the data table. So let's come to the factories folder. Inside database factories, we have the default user factory added. If we'll come to the definition, here we have the default fields added. Now after this email address, we will have to add for phone number. So I will use fake function and I will add unique constant here and I will call phone number function. Okay, this is done. Now we can execute this factory using the Laravel artisan console. So I will come to the terminal and I will use php artisan tinker command. Let's hit enter, and this opened the REPL command line interface. Here we can execute the command. So I will add user factory and we'll have to define the count of records that we want to insert using the factory, and then we will have to call this create function. Now inside this count function, we will have to specify the number of records that we want to insert. So as of now, I want to insert 20,000 records, and we will see the difference between client side and server side, so that it is needed to have more records in order to see the differences. So I have a specified 20,000 records. Let's hit enter, and this is inserting 20,000 records in the users table. Now let's wait for a moment. Yes, the records have been inserted in the users table. If we'll come to the database.sqlite, let's navigate to the users table. Yes, we have 20,000 records added. Okay. Now in the next step, we will apply the client side data table. So for that we need a view first. So let's come to the resources, views, and here I will create a blade file. Let's suppose users.blade.php. Here I will generate a basic HTML skeleton. So I already have one extension for Bootstrap 5. So I will type bs5 and hit enter. This generated the Bootstrap 5 skeleton here. Okay, let me dock this window. I will update this title, data table in Laravel 11. This is Bootstrap CDN. I will remove header, main and footer. Okay, and I will clean up this integrity and cross origin, that is not required. Okay, this is fine. Same thing for style as well. Okay, this is done. Inside this body tag, I will create one div container. Okay, and I will add padding y of 5. Inside this container, I will create one card component, and there will be card header, card body. Inside this card header, I will add heading of 5, and I will add class as card title. Okay, and I will add title as data table implementation in Laravel 11. Now inside this card body, we need a tabular layout. So I will create table component using Bootstrap, and I will pass class as table striped. Okay, and before this table, I will add div class table responsive, so that it will create a container for this table. If the table width is exceeding, then this will wrap in a scrollable container. So I will wrap this table inside this div. Okay, now inside this table, we will create t-head and t-body. So I will create t-head, and we will be having t-body. Inside this t-head, I will create one table row, and then inside this table row, I will create th. Okay, so for the first th, I want to add column name as name, and next I will be adding email, then I will add phone number, and I will add one more field as created at. Okay, this is fine. Now we will have to render this users blade. So for that we will have to create a route. Now let's come to the web.php file. Here I will create one route, and I will use get function. Inside this get function, I will define the endpoint name as users, and here we will have to specify the function. So I will create a controller first, so that we can write the functionality inside that. I will exit this, and here I will create one controller using php artisan make command, and I will specify the controller name as user controller. Let's hit enter. Yes, user controller has been created. Let's come to the code editor. Here we will have to specify the controller name. So I will add user controller class, and this controller has been imported here. And now we'll have to specify the function name. So I will add function name as index. Here we can specify the name route as users.index. Okay, this is done. Now we have the route ready to render that view, but before that we have to define this function inside the user controller. So let's come to the controller, and we will define this function as index. Inside this function, I will pass request object. Okay, here I will return that view. So we have view name as users. This is fine. Now let's come to the browser. Let's try to switch to the users route. Yes, we have the tabular layout ready. Now we will render the data over this tabular layout. So let's come to the code editor again. Here I will fetch users record through user model. So I will use eloquent user colon all. Okay. And I will capture this in a variable as $users. Inside this view, I will pass this user data using compact. Okay. Firstly, we are going to apply client side data table. So let's come to the view again. And here inside this t body, I will use for else directive to render that users record. So I will type users as $user, and here we will have to write table row. Inside this table row, we'll add td. Now inside this td, we will have to render the data based on the database column. So we have the field name as name. Let's duplicate this. Then we have email. Next we have phone number. And lastly we have the created at column. And for the empty, we will add tr and then td, and we will add call span as 4 because we have total 4 td here. And I will add message as no data found. Okay, this is fine. Now let's come to the browser. Let me refresh. Yeah, here we have the 20,000 records rendered over this table. Okay, now we will apply data table over this data. So let's come to the official documentation of this data table. And here, let's click on full getting started guide. Let's scroll down to this installation. Here we will have to include the CDN. However, we can use npm as well. So as of now, I'm going to use this using CDN. So I will copy this CDN. I will come to the code editor. Inside this users blade, I will scroll up. And here after this bootstrap CSS, I will paste those CDNs. The first CDN is data table CSS. So this is added in the correct place here. This should be added after the bootstrap. And here the second CDN is datatable.js. So we'll have to add this before closing of this body tag. So after this bootstrap JS, I will add datatable.js. Okay. And data table requires jQuery CDN. So we will have to include jQuery CDN as well. So let's come to the browser. jQuery CDN. Here we have the very first link, jQuery CDN. Let's click on minified and let's copy the CDN of this minified jQuery version. Let's copy, and here just before this bootstrap and data table JS, let's paste that jQuery CDN. Okay, this is fine. Here we have included datatable.js, jQuery CDN, and also this datatable.css. Now we will have to create one instance of this data table so that data table will be applied on this particular table. And for this, we will have to add one class or one ID for this particular table. I will create one class as data table. Okay. Now we will have to apply data table on this table. So I will copy this class name as data table. I will scroll down, and after these scripts, I will add custom script as script type equals text / JavaScript, and we will have this script closing. Now inside this script, I will add $document.ready function. So I will add jQuery function. Inside this, I will initialize data table for that particular class. So we have copied that class name as a data table, and I will apply data table on this table class. So I will write data table. This is fine. Okay. So we are initializing data table here. As of now, I have added this script here inside the same blade file. If needed, we can add a separate script file and we can include that here. Now let's come to the browser. Let's refresh. Yes, the data table is applied on this table here. We have 20,000 records rendered here, but after applying this data table, the data table breaks this into chunks. So we have per page 10 records here. If we'll navigate to the next page, okay, this is working. So this is the client side data table implementation. Here if we'll check the code inside the user controller, we have fetched all the records at a time and we have passed that to the view, and inside the view we have applied the data table over there. So in the client side, all data have been fetched at the initial time. When this page has been loaded, this loaded with this 20,000 records, alright. So this may cause the loading time issue, because in the dynamic application we don't know how many records will be there. Later it can be 40,000 or more than lakhs. So in that time the client side data table will have problem, and this will take more time to load the entire data over here. So to minimize the loading time, jQuery provides the flexibility to implement data table using server side. So in the server side, it won't fetch all the records initial time. Instead, it will fetch the records into chunks. So when you will navigate to the next page, in the server side, it will make another AJAX call, and that will fetch another 10 records, and those records will be displayed here in the next page. Okay, so that will minimize the loading time, alright. And in Laravel, there is a package called Yajra that provides the server side data table implementation. So let's search for Yajra data table. Let's click on this. Here we have the installation. So let's copy this command. Let's come to the terminal. Let's paste that command here. Let's hit enter. And this is installing Yajra DataTable 11.0 version. This is the latest one. The package has been installed. Now let's come to the documentation. Here we don't have to register the provider, because after Laravel 5.5 version, this will automatically register that. Now in the case, if you want to publish this configuration for the data table, and you can customize the configuration according to your need, but as of now, we don't need to customize anything. So I'm not going to publish this data table configuration file. Now I'm going to apply server side data table rendering. So I will come to the code editor. Firstly, I will comment this tbody. This is not needed now. And if we'll scroll down, here inside this data table property, I will create one object and I will pass few properties, just like server side, and this will be true because we are going to apply server side data table. So we'll have to add this property to true. Also we'll have to add processing, and this will be true. Next we will have to add AJAX call. So we will have to define AJAX. Inside this AJAX, we will have to add the URL. So this will be a normal AJAX call, and here you will have to add that URL endpoint. And for this, we already defined one route as users. So we will make AJAX call on the same route here. So I will add route function because we have added this script in the same blade file. So we can use Laravel helper function, and inside this route, we will have to pass the route name as users.index. This is fine. Now based on this AJAX call, we will have to handle that in the controller. So let's come to the controller. Here inside this, I will add dump and die $request AJAX function. So when we will perform AJAX call using this request, this will return true if that is AJAX request, else it will return false. So let's come to the browser. Let's come to the application. Let me open the developer console. I will come to the network tab. I will refresh. First time this returned false. So I will comment this request. I will come to the browser. I will refresh. I will click on OK. And here I will check this network request. This is rendering this view. Now before rendering this view, I will enable this dump and die request AJAX. And here I will replay this network request again. I will check. Now we are getting true. because after loading this page, this will make this AJAX call. So at the first time, we didn't get that AJAX request. So this is returning true here. I will add one condition. If this is AJAX call, then I will fetch user record. So as of now, I will comment these lines and I will add users, user, and here I will use raw query. So I will add query function here. If you will add dump and die $users, then you will be able to see raw query here. If we will replay this request, here you will be getting eliminate builder. Alright, so this is returning this raw query for this user model. Now we will extend this query here. Now from here we will apply the server side data table using Yajra. So I will call DataTables function and we will have to import this using DataTable facades. Alright, here this has imported this namespace. We'll have to add colon. We can use off function or we can use eloquent as well. So as of now, I'm going to use eloquent. Inside this eloquent, I will have to pass this users record. Okay, and here after fetching the records, we will have to convert that in the form of JSON. So here I will add make as true and we will have to return this data tables records. Now we will have to return the view. So we'll write return view users. Okay, now let's come to the browser and let's check the network request again. So we'll click on replay XHR. Let's click on this. Here the request has been processed, and if we'll expand this data object, we got these 10 records here. Okay, if we'll expand the first array, inside this we have these fields as name, email, phone number, ID, created at and updated at. Okay, now the AJAX request is completed. In the next step, we will have to capture these columns in order to render the data over this table. So let's come to the code editor. Inside this users blade, we will have to specify the columns for which we want to render the data over the table. So we will add columns property and we will have to specify the array because there will be more than one columns. Inside this array, we will have to create object because in the network response, we are getting data in the array of objects. So we will write object and we will have to add the columns based on our table header. So in the table header, we have the column name as name, email, phone number and created at, and according to these columns, we have the respective columns added in the database as name, email, phone number and created at. So we have to bind the data through these columns in the users blade here. So inside these columns, we will have to bind the data. For the first column, we have the name. So we will bind this through this name column. So we will write name, and also we will have to specify one more column, that means one more property for the same column, and that will be applied for searching or sorting the fields. So we will have to add it for name and this will bind through name itself. Okay, let's duplicate this for other columns. Next we have email. So in the data, the next column will be email, and in the name property we will have to pass the email so that when we will apply searching or ordering, that will capture through this column only. Next we have phone number. We will have to add the same column here, and lastly we have the created at. This is done. So we bound these columns based on the JSON response here. Now if we refresh, the records have been rendered properly over this table here. Now if you scroll down, here we have the pagination, and if you click on next row, this will perform another AJAX call. So let me clear this network log first. I will click on second page. Here when I clicked on second page number, this triggered one more AJAX call. Okay, and if we'll check the payload, in the payload, this added the payload as draw2 because this needs to be render data from the second page. Here it added the columns as particular for these columns. This will render the data from second page. Okay. This is length as start 10 and length 10. That means in the second page, this has rendered data as from 11 to 20. So the index is 10 and this specified the total length. That means in the second page, this will render the total 10 records. Alright. So based on this will make the AJAX request to the server, and in the response, this will fetch the next 10 records. Alright. Now if we'll check the total entries per page here, if we'll click on 25, now here it fetched 25 records, and on every page this will fetch the 25 records. So in the second page and in the parameter, this passed the start as 25 and length as 25. This fetched the records from 25th, okay, and the length will be 25, so that the index will be 26 to 50. So this is how server side is working. Now we will work on the customization part. So in the data, you can see we have the created at column, and this is the server side datetime format. That means the format is YMD, but in the JavaScript, this is not rendering properly in the correct format. So we will have to customize this data before rendering this to client side. Firstly, if we'll check the network request, inside the preview, we have the data, and if we'll expand any data here we can see in the JSON format, this is returning the data in this format. Now we will have to modify this format before rendering this to JSON. So I will come to the code editor. Now we will come to the controller. Here, while applying this data table, I will modify this column name. So for that, Yajra provides function to add column. So we have the function as add column here. Now inside this add column, we will have to specify the column name that we want to add. So I will add the same column name as created at, because I want to customize the date format for this created at column. So I will override the date format for this value here. So I will write function, and inside this I will create one object of this users, just like this, and I will parse this date before returning this to JSON response. So I will write user created at, okay. Here I will apply carbon. So I will import carbon first, use carbon, and I will apply carbon parse function. Inside this I have passed this created at date, and I will apply the format as YMD only, okay, just like this. This is parse, okay. Let's save, come to the browser, let me refresh now. Here we can see the date format has been changed here, and if we'll check the network response, if we'll expand the data, here for the created at, we have the date format in the YMD format. So we can control every data from the controller itself, because Yajra provides the flexibility to manage everything through server side only, okay. Here if you will try to filter any records, let's suppose I want to search Botsford. Here you can see this filtered records from Botsford only. So the search functionality is working. If you will try to order this column in ascending or descending, this is working expectedly. Now let's suppose if you want to add more columns here, just like to manage any action, so that you can handle the event or action on that. So after this created at column, I want to add one more column as action, and in that action I want to add edit or delete button. So in that case, firstly we will have to define the table header. So inside this th, we will have to add one more column as action, okay, and the same column we will have to specify in the Ajax response. Here we will have to define the data as action and the name will be action. Okay. Now let's come to the controller. I will add one more column. So I will add function as add column. Inside this, I will specify column name as action and I will map this user here. Inside this, I will return one button. So I will return anchor tag and the button title will be, let's suppose, edit and delete. So I will add one more button, okay, edit, and this will be delete. Here I will pass class as btn, btn danger, btn sm. Same thing for this edit button, I will pass class as btn, btn success and btn sm. This is fine. Let's come to the browser. Let's refresh. Here we can see this rendered that button in the HTML format as edit and delete. Now in some cases, if the HTML is not able to parse properly here, you will have to make that column in the raw HTML format. So for that, Yajra DataTable provides function. If you check in the sidebar, under the column editing, you will have raw columns. Okay. In the raw column, if you scroll down, we can make any columns to raw HTML so that this will render HTML content properly. Here inside this raw columns array, you will have to specify those columns for which you want to render the HTML content. So in our case, we have rendered these buttons as edit and delete in the HTML format. So we will have to specify this particular column name as action. Okay. So we will use raw columns function. Here we will have to add raw columns. Inside this array, we will have to specify column. If you have more columns, then you can add that comma separated here. Okay. Here we can specify the route. So inside href, I will append route function here. So for the edit, let's suppose I want to pass route name as users.edit and in the route parameter, I will pass user ID. Same thing for the delete. So for the delete, I will change this to button, just like this. I will show you how we can apply event listener on this. So I will specify data attribute as ID and I will pass that user ID here. So I will add user ID. Okay. And in this delete button, I will pass one more class as delete user. This is fine. Now let's come to the browser. Let me refresh this. Here it thrown users.edit and delete route is not specified. So we will have to define those routes here. And for this, I will create controller group route controller group function. Inside this, I will move this route here. Okay. I will duplicate this route and I will change this for users edit and here I will pass the parameter that will be dynamic ID here. We'll have to change the name route as users.edit and I will add one route. This will be for delete and I will change this method type as delete. This will be users/delete. Okay. And this will call the destroy function and the route name will be users.destroy and for the edit I will change this function name as edit and we will have to end with this semicolon. Now let's come to the controller. After this index function, let's define edit function here, and we will have to capture that ID. I will add user find or fail $id. I will capture this in a variable as $user, and I will add dump and die $user. Similarly, we will have to define destroy function here. Okay, this is for deleting users, and we have the parameter as $id. Okay, let's add the annotation for this. This is for edit. Okay, this is fine. Now let's come to the browser. Let's refresh. Yeah, this has rendered again. Now let's try to click on edit. On edit, we are getting that user record based on the given ID. Okay, now regarding the delete functionality, we will have to define the click event on that. So on every click of delete, that will capture that particular row user ID, and based on that, this will perform the AJAX call. I want to add row index so that on every column we will have row index particularly for that user, and for this Yajra DataTable provides one column as index column. So if we click on this index column here, this provides one function as add index column. Let's copy this function name inside this listing function. Here we can add index column. So this will basically add index column. Here this is passing date format for created at column, and we are adding action column here. Okay, now if we'll check the network response, if we'll refresh, let's check the network. Inside data, we have a new column introduced by Yajra. This is as DT row index. That means this has added one column as DT row index in every row. So we can display that column here, let's suppose in the first column. So let's copy this column name. Let's come to the code editor. Inside this users blade, here we can map that column in the first index. So I will add data. This will be DT row index. Now in the name, let's paste that DT row index. Okay, this is fine. Let's come to the browser. Let's refresh now. Yes, we have the row index added by Yajra DataTable. So on every row, this has added this row index. Okay, this is fine. And here we will have to add one more th for this row index. So let's add that. Now in the first th, we have the SL, that means serial number. Let's refresh. Yes, this is fine. Now if you will notice, we have the sorting button added in the action column, and even this is not needed for this action because we are not going to sort column based on the edit delete. So let's disable this ordering functionality for this particular column. So let's come to the code editor. Inside this users blade, we'll scroll down. Under the column section, we have specified the action column. Here we will have to add property as orderable to false. Also we will have to disable the searching functionality so that when we will apply global search, that means if we'll search for edit, here it should not search with that action column. So we will have to apply searchable to false. Now let me refresh. Here that sorting icon has been removed, and also we will have to freeze the searching for this row index column so that when you will apply any search. This is trying to search with the first column also, and we don't have to search with the first column because that we are generating for the row index only. So we will have to add same searchable property to false for that particular row index column. So let's copy this searchable false. Let's add it for particular row index here. Now let's refresh once, and now let's try to search any record. Yes, that is filtering here. If we'll search for edit, it won't apply anything here because we have freezed the searchable option for this action and for this row index column. So we have implemented the client side and server side data table functionality here. Now we will work on the delete action, so that when we will delete any record from the users table, this table should be refreshed without reloading this entire page, so that we will have the updated entries here. So let's implement the click functionality for this delete action. So inside the delete button, we have passed that class as delete user, and we have added data attribute as ID. So on click of delete user, this will fetch particular that row ID here, and based on that ID, we will apply delete action using AJAX request. So let's come to the code editor. Inside this users blade, after the data table initialization, I will apply delete user functionality. Okay. So we will have to apply event delegation because this row is generating dynamically, and on every click of this delete button, we want to perform that delete action. So I will apply event delegation, and I will capture that parent selector of this particular table. Okay. So I will write table dot on click of that particular button class. So we have the button class as delete user. Okay. Then I will apply the function. Inside this function, I will get the current row user ID. So we have added the data attribute on that particular button. Here we'll have to pass the dot for that class. So I will define one variable as const user ID, and that I will fetch from $this data ID because we have added data attribute here, and I will add console user ID. Let me refresh. Let me try to click on the first row delete button. Yes, I received that user ID here. Now if we'll check from the last page, I want to delete this. So I will click on delete. Yes, I got that user ID as well. Now based on this ID, I will add one condition. If we have user ID, then I will apply AJAX call, and before making that AJAX call, I will add one confirmation. Confirm, are you sure you want to delete? If it is confirmed, then I will make AJAX call. Okay. Here we will have to pass the URL. So we have defined the route here as users.destroy, and we are adding again in the same blade. So we can write URL helper here. Inside this, I will use backtick. In the URL, I will pass user/delete, and we will have to pass that ID here. So let's append that ID as $user ID. Next we will have to specify the method as delete because in the route we have specified it as delete, and for the delete method, Laravel will expect one CSRF token. So we will have to pass that CSRF token here. So we will define data object, and inside this object we will have to pass that CSRF token. So we will add token Inside this, again I will use Laravel helper function CSRF token, and then we'll capture that success response. So we'll add success function. Inside this, I will capture the response here. Okay. In the response, I will add condition if response dot status is success, then we will have to re-render this Ajax table. Okay. And in the else, I will add alert, and that I will pass the dynamic message from response dot message. For any error, I will add error function, and I will throw error as something went wrong. Okay, this is fine. Now inside this success response, we will have to re-render this data table without refreshing the entire page. So what we will have to do, we will have to capture this data table instance in one variable as const table equals, okay, and here inside this success, I will add table dot ajax dot reload function. Inside this reload function, this expects two parameter, one will be callback and the second will be boolean. So in the callback, if we want to re-render any previous function after reloading the data table, then we will have to specify those functions, and in the boolean parameter we will have to pass true or false so that it won't reset the pagination. That means, let's suppose if you want to delete any record from the page number 2, then after deletion, when the data table will re-render, that will reset the page to page 1. So that we have to prevent here. So in the first parameter, I will pass null because we don't have any callback function yet, and in the second parameter, I will pass false because I don't want to reset that page to page 1 after deleting the records. Okay, this is fine. Now we will have to implement this delete functionality in the controller. So in the controller, for the delete, here we will have to add if condition. If that user record exists, then this will delete that user, and after deleting, this will return response JSON as status success, message as user deleted successfully. In the else part, if that user does not exist or if it is not deleted, I will add status as failed and message is unable to delete user. Okay, this is fine. Let's come to the browser. Let me refresh. Now let's try to click on delete. Here it prompted, are you sure you want to delete? If I will cancel, this aborted that execution. Now if I will try to delete again, and I will confirm, yes, I have deleted that record, and if you have noticed, that record has gone from this list, and if we check the total count here, this has total 19,999 records. Okay. Now if we will come to the third page, and from this third page, if we want to delete this 24th index record, that record has deleted, and here it stayed back on same page. Alright, here you can customize the layouts according to your application or themes. For more detailed functionality, you can check out the official documentation of this Yajra data table. Here we can add export functionality. Here we can add advanced searching and sorting. This will apply the filter, and we can apply the column search as well. Okay. So that's it for this tutorial. We have covered everything from setting up data tables in Laravel 11 with Yajra to implement both client and server side tables. Also, we added custom actions and applied search and filter options. So thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon for more Laravel tutorials. Also, let me know in the comments if you have any questions related to data table. I'll be happy to assist you. So thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video. Until then, happy coding.